Hi, Magic is Real listeners. I'm Shannon. I'm your host. This is the podcast where we talk about near-death experiences and all things metaphysical and spiritual. One thing I always forget to ask because I'm terrible at self-promotion is if you like the podcast and you would like to support it for free, please subscribe, hit the like button, comment below. It really helps the algorithm and it helps get the word out about the podcast. So thank you in advance. Today I've been waiting for this for a long time. I'm excited. We've had some scheduling issues, but I had the pleasure of interviewing Ainsley Sewell-Threadgold. Great interview if you haven't checked it out. And today he's on with his beautiful soulmate. This is Krista Gorman. And both of these beautiful people are near-death experiencers, but their love story is an otherworldly spiritual love story. So they're here to share their sort of their individual stories and also how they came together and found each other in this 3D world. Welcome, Ainsley and Krista. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi.
Hi, thank you
Hi.
so much for inviting us.
I'm happy to have you here. So I'll just begin by, I know I've interviewed Ainsley, and I'm sure you've done this before, so you can kind of choose where you want to start, but I'd love to know a little bit about your background. You can kind of give a little bit about both of your backgrounds and uh, as it pertains to your love story in any way you really want to tell it. And I'll just ask questions as we go.
Okay,
Do you want to
I'll
start with
start.
you and start with your
Yeah.
background, a little bit about your near-death experience?
Yeah.
'Cause
So,
Yeah, because we haven't heard yours, and so I think that's a good place to start.
okay.
I always
Yeah.
do it. Always gives me
Yeah.
Well, for me, my near-death experience, I like to refer to it as my death experience because I
You did
died.
die?
Didn't have a heartbeat for 8 minutes. Well,
Yeah.
not a detectable one. I wasn't on a cardiac monitor, so there's no like documentation of that. But what they do is they like palpate for a pulse, and I lost my pulse for 8 minutes. So my story was that I graduated from my physician assistant training in July of 2000 or June of 2000, and I was due to give birth to my daughter 3 weeks later. And during the induction, I had to have an emergency C-section because things were not progressing and she was in distress. And just before they were going to perform the cesarean, excuse me, I had what's called an amniotic, what they believe is an amniotic fluid embolism, where I just started having trouble breathing, and very quickly my heart stopped. And the last thing I recall was rolling from my room across the hallway on labor and delivery into the operating room. And my vision just sort of like, just kind of closed. Let's like closing your eyes, but it's like kind of like this. And as that was happening, I was trying to get air into my lungs. And what was happening was little micro clots were clotting off the vasculature in my lungs. And I wasn't able to perfuse air. And so it's like trying to suck air through a little tiny straw, what it felt like at the very end. And just as I was trying to bring air in and everything was closing, I felt this peace just come from behind me and above me, just kind of like over, just this real, like complete peace. And my vision went away. And then the next point of my awareness was of being high above my body. And I could see the body down there and I could see people around it. But I didn't have any kind of earthly identifiers. I didn't remember being human, but I was pure consciousness, and I watched as these little black particles came racing up from my body to where my vision was, and I was sort of like this undulating, loose, static cloud, and I was very neutral and just sort of looking around and like, oh, that's interesting, you know. And I looked down and I saw what I later learned was my daughter being born. And I started to get curious and I kind of shifted around to the other side of the room, other side of the body. And I felt this tug to my left. And I was becoming more and more curious. And I felt, no, I want to stay. And it tugged harder. So I said, okay, I'll go. And then I was pulled out of there. And I went through the wall into this bright white flash of space. And that was just sort of instantaneous. And then I went through another sort of threshold and into the same dense particles that I was, only just much denser, much more numerous. And I was speeding imperceptibly fast and moving along. And I recall looking to my left, and I could see where the sort of like quote unquote wall next to me became a little bit liquidy at points, and then became the dense particles again. And then all of a sudden I stopped, and I got this download, and it was sort of like a funnel of information. And it was every question I'd ever had, any question, every question. And it all funneled and boiled down to one answer, and it was love. And that again happened instantaneously. And then it's like love, and I'm like, and I was just blissed out, blissful love. I felt the love, and it was everything, and nothing else like existed except that. And then I looked over to my right, and there was this little white light like far off in the distance, and energetically, like I felt it call it, like it wanted me to come towards it, and I wanted to go to it. So I started moving in that direction, and as I got closer, it became wider and bigger. And then I saw within it, like just beyond it, there were these shadow beings, and there was a little boy in the front, and there were adults sort of behind it. And I could tell like it was like indistinct, but he had like a wide brim hat and overalls on. He was probably like about 7 years old, and he needed my help. So I wanted to help him. So all of this is the feeling of things. There was no thinking mind. There was no thoughts. And so everything was by feeling. So I moved into that space, and I felt like, okay, where is the little boy? I looked around, he wasn't there. Now it was just the adults that were sort of fanned out. And I felt that they all wanted my help. And I felt back, I want to help you. So then they started to come at me, like dart at me one by one from different directions. And what I noticed was that I was starting to like diminish, basically. Like things started to become less distinct out here. And I was literally like fading away. And I felt like, no, I don't want to, I don't want to be here. If that's going to happen, I don't want to be here. And I was pulled out of there. As soon as I felt that, I was taken away. So I was back into the dense dark particles. And then I was there for a briefer, like there's no time, but the space that I traveled was shorter. And then I went through another opening that was less distinct than the first one. And it was still like dark, but there was sort of circular. And I merged through that into this gorgeous landscape. And it was these beautiful yellow flowers and green rolling hills in the distance, and a rock covered waterfall, like moss on the rocks. And then over to my right was this evergreen forest. And I just like, right when I moved through that opening there, I merged with all of it. And I was the flowers and the waterfall and the rocks and the trees and everything. And it was just, again, bliss. And I could have existed there eternally. It was completely perfect. And then I was flanked on both sides by very, very tall, beige entities that had sort of like drapes, like kind of like this material, but beige. And they were just sort of draped, and they didn't have faces per se, but they had like the hint of a face. And everything was through feeling. So they felt to me, you can stay here, you can go to what comes next, what's beyond here, or you can go back. And I didn't have any sense of what came next necessarily, or of being human. I still didn't have any memory of being Krista in the physical body, but I was still Krista in my consciousness. And I sort of contemplated it very, very briefly. And I felt back, I would like to go back. So I started moving backwards right away, just as fast as I had moved previously. And they turned, so the opening's getting smaller and smaller as I'm moving. And they turned and they felt to me, well, if you go back, you need to share what you learned here. And I felt back to them, okay. And then the next thing I remember was having pain in my chest. And ultimately, 36 hours after my heart stopped, I woke up in the ICU. What had happened was I'd had an amniotic fluid embolism, they believe. And then I went into disseminated intravascular coagulation, which is when your body loses its ability to clot your blood. And that often happens after an amniotic fluid embolism. That's kind of almost how they make the diagnosis. So I had to require several transfusions in the ICU. I was intubated, sedated, in a medically induced coma to keep me calm, because I had been fighting the tube. I had been fighting, like, I guess, threatening for the IV to be taken out, pulling it out or whatever. But I woke up there, and then, I didn't remember being pregnant. I didn't remember any of it. I didn't yet have the memory of my near-death experience, but I had all of the sort of side effects of it. I was completely blissed out. Like, everything was perfect. Nothing was wrong. Nothing was bad. Nothing was good. Everything was like, it was just felt nice. Everything just felt really nice. And so I gradually came around very, very, very slowly, about 6 days. It took, and then I met my daughter for the first time. And
At which point you remembered you had a baby.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
felt like I'd already known her, like we just had known, I had known her forever.
Mhm.
And I thought I should do all those things that new mothers do, which is count the toes and the fingers. So I like took her blanket off, and I'm like looking around to see if anybody notices that, see what I'm doing? I'm doing what you're supposed to do. Like, I'm okay.
Mhm.
Because I was not the old Krista. I was a very different Krista when I came back. And
I've heard, thank you for that. That's yours is especially beautiful, the way you told it, the way you experienced it. And I think the last couple of people I interviewed said the same thing about having no awareness of their human self.
yeah,
Like, just complete dissociation from the human, which to us sounds so scary, but it isn't. It's scary because we're so attached to this stuff that's here.
yes.
And then you realize,
Half the
right?
problem when we are so attached to things, and it's funny what we've become attached to, and it's almost like we've become attached to the wrong things. And then that's perhaps where the addictive personalities come out, and where we have the earthly issues of the 3D realm, which is, we spend a lot of time stressing and worrying over the small stuff, and then when we're free of that, we let all of that go, and it's almost like everything is. It's like clothes. You take the clothes off, and then you take the skin suit off, and then you are who you truly are, and then it's like, oh, I'm quite a lot more magnificent than what I thought it was, and this is, I'm everything.
Yeah.
I'm everything.
And
And everything just becomes so small and insignificant. It's like,
I know, I love that idea. And I know I know it's not something that you'd recommend to other people, but as long as you had to go through that kind of thing, I know that there's so much to be gained. And before we go into the story of you too, because I'm really excited to hear it. I also wanted to ask you on that note. That was a really good point you both made. After a near-death experience, can you maintain that feeling? Or how do you, when you get into the daily grind, Are you able to summon that feeling at will, or are you still like, no, I remember it, but I'm still feeling stressed right now?
I think it's more, yeah, the latter, because and I think I said that right, the latter being the
Yeah.
last thing you said.
Yes. Yeah. I always
Because
have to check that too with
I know I'm
myself.
like,
Not the
yeah,
former, the latter.
it's interesting because for me, it was my experience in recovering where it felt like layers of an onion were being peeled. Like I was
Mm.
slowly starting to become the old Krista, and it would be like literally after waking in the morning, every week or 2 weeks, I would realize I'm more of me is back.
Yeah.
I feel heavier than I did before, and yeah, it's like my NDE in times of challenge, it's the thing that can help me bring me back in a second.
Yeah.
Like if I just have a sense of it, then I'm like back, and then then I lose it again, and I'm like, oh I'm back, and then
Hmm.
so it's like it's a lot of that, but it took for me, it took 10 years to really start to process my NDE, because
Yeah.
living in this world, there's such a pull for us, energetically to be in in our lives and focused on this and focused on that, and that's important, and you need to do this, and the demands on us every day are incredible,
Hmm.
where we don't have that space around us often where we can just be,
Yeah.
and not be concerned about anything except
Sometimes,
the rocks in front of you, or the tree in front of you.
sometimes it's harder, and then other times it's easier.
Hmm.
It's harder to, for me, um, you know, when I rediscovered the memories from the hypnotherapy, like I spoke about last time. Coming back from being under hypnosis and back in the experience. It's like I was remembering it, but I was living it for the first time, and then having, like Krista said, being more of a self again afterwards. I had that instantly. So when I was brought round from the hypnotherapy, there was the buzz of, wow, I have had something happen, and it does explain that hole in my memory that I had for the 20 odd years, and why I'd always felt a little bit different and everything, and that's like great. But then I was surrounded by the fact that I was back being me, and that was the person that I didn't really want to be at that point.
Yeah.
Um, it was that point in my life where it was just everything needed to change, and it was starting to change, but I was still that guy that was ashamed of looking at himself in the mirror, and things like that. So that was a very hard pill to swallow. But you have got a light at the end of the tunnel, and you do have something that you can focus on. And like Krista said, sometimes been drawn back to something that just reminds you. I mean, it might not be a direct reminder of the experience. It might just be um, something else that helps you to be as connected as you can be.
Right.
It's like people who have spiritual experiences in church, or people who have spiritual experiences watching the sunrise, or anytime that they connect with something greater than themselves. That's it. So when people look at us with envious eyes and go, God, you've had this experience, and how much more wonderful life must be because you've had it. It's like, yeah, but I had to get run over and completely mangled, and Krista had to have a amniotic fluid embolism and bleed out,
Yeah.
and other people had to be in car accidents and fall down cliff faces, and we had to be broken to be remade.
Hmm.
um we had to be like what the Japanese used to do with dishes, and mend them with gold.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Like, my friend Renew that was on the podcast. She's just one of my favorite people, Renew Aurora, and she is someone that she's in a wheelchair. She lost, but the thing is, she always says it's still the best thing for how it changed her, and that like she doesn't regret it, and she is like, it was the best thing that ever happened to me for
Yeah.
changing my life and helping me see things from a different perspective. And I love that.
and
She
that
is,
helps other people,
yeah,
and that thing that helps other people is the fact that she can see things from another perspective, and
right.
it grounds you in the sense of, well, what have I really got to be worried about? There's this person who if I was in that position, I don't know. I don't know how I'd do it. I don't know what I would do if I lost the ability to move the way I do.
Yeah.
And this person, look at how graceful they are with it, and how well they handle it. And it's like, what have they got that I don't have?
Mm-hmm.
Just a slightly
Well,
different
we're mirrors,
perception.
right?
Yeah,
We're just mirrors for each other. So that your friend, you, me, when we're sharing of ourselves, we're mirroring the other person we're sharing with, or the other people we're sharing with. So then those people, they see their reflection in us. So they see the possibilities for themselves, and maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. Uh,
Yes, I was actually thinking to say that, but even after interviewing people like you, it helps me to remember what really matters, what's really going on here. And sometimes I'll just look around me in the life and go, "No," in life and go, no, it's okay. Don't take it. It's just a simulation. Just don't sweat it too much. Obviously, easy to say when it's not some major catastrophe, but you'll have a little bit of stress about something and then just say, hey, remember Krista's story, remember Ainsley's story. And it really, that's what I'm hoping to do with this podcast. So thank you for sharing both of your stories. Now, I'd love to hear your love story wherever. I'm sure you've told it. Tell it however you want to tell it.
yeah. So at the point where I'd been drawn to the hypnotherapy, for those people who watched your podcast with my story, obviously, um, I had been given a book by Dr. Penny Satori, and it was after I had the sciatica, which had caused me to have similar problems with my leg that I had years and years earlier. And the osteopath that gave me the book obviously gave me the book for a reason. And the book had it was obviously about near-death experiences. Dr. Penny Satori had done a 20-year study on near-death experiences after having been a nurse in a high dependency unit in the UK, and having direct experiences with people who had come back after having heart attacks, saying, "I think I've been somewhere." So she was given funding, and she'd done this 20-year, what it became to be 20-year study, and it culminated in this book. And there was lots of accounts from people who had similar experiences. So I was reading this book, and it's like, oh, that sounds like me, and I've had, I feel like that, and I disturb radio waves, and I can't wear watches, and the thing for me was that I just didn't have the memory as to why.
Mm.
So I had contacted the website that had been associated with the book Near Death Experiences UK. So in the meantime, whilst waiting for them to get back to me to see whether anyone else had had similar experience of not having memory after having an experience, I looked into hypnotherapy, which was where I was able to draw on the experience finally. After I'd had the hypnotherapy, and after I'd had at least part of the experience given back to me, they got back in touch, and I was able to share with them the experience. And they put me in contact with a lady called Kelly Michelle Walsh, who became a good friend of mine. She lived close to me in the UK, in the city of Manchester. And they, at the time, had wanted to set up a near-death experience group in the north of the UK, because it was all London-based. So that's why we got in contact with each other. And not long after we met and became friends, she was talking about Facebook and the near-death experience groups on there, and how helpful they'd been to her because she'd had a near-death experience. And I shied away from Facebook. I'd come off it a couple of years earlier on, and I wasn't going to go back on. And she said, "Oh no, it's a really good, healthy group of people, and you'd really like it." So went back on, and we then set up a group called the Positivity Power Movement. And one of the things to help set up the group was that she was going to invite her friends onto the group, and any people that I had that I knew I was going to invite. Well, I didn't know that Kelly knew Krista. And the reason why she knew Krista was because of Dr. Penny Satori, the person who wrote the book. So after the book had been released, Kelly had reached out to Dr. Penny and in an email, and it was one of 14 odd thousand emails that Penny wasn't going to get to because she was very busy, but saw Kelly's email and read it at Kelly's email. And then at the same time, or round about the same time, Krista had also written to Penny because she was interested in the publishing side in the UK, because you were writing your book at the time, weren't you?
Mm-hmm.
And Penny had the inspiration to introduce Kelly and Krista to each other. I'm very busy at the moment, but I think you two would like to meet. So they became friends that way. So once the group was set up, one of the things that Kelly had decided to do was to get people to make videos of who they were and what they believed in and what they wanted from the group. And it was a reflection of her experience, and she'd been given this message that like-minded souls would come together and change the world. So it was all about that, and everyone on the group had not had all the same experiences, but certainly had come to the point where they were more spiritually aware. And we all did videos, and everyone was getting lots of likes and loves. And I'd done what I felt was an important video to me. I'd seen something very impactful, and I'd done my 2-minute video, and I was very proud of it. And I was also very precious about it. I put it out there, and I was just like, I hope it's well received. And no likes, no loves, no comments, no nothing. It didn't even look like it had been viewed, and I was like, damn it. So anyway, in the meantime, I didn't realize that it had been viewed, and a certain somebody who is now sat to my left had seen it, and it had an impact on you, didn't it?
Yes, I love you so much. He tells the story the same way every time.
It's so cute. He's adorable.
I'm going red.
So cute.
Yes, that's how I became aware of Ainsley, really, in the beginning, because I had been invited by Kelly to be a part of the Facebook group, and then I had done a video and he had seen mine, and we had kind of like similar experiences with one another, where me watching him, his voice, there was something in his voice that just resonated with me. And I walked away from my computer. Like I think I watched the video probably like 15 times, just this short little video of him speaking. And I walked away from like, what the hell is going on with me? Like,
yeah. I mean, he's cute, but 15 times is a lot of times.
No, it's but for me, like, cause I'm like, like I got my own thing going on, and
yeah.
And I'm good, like I'm not looking for anything.
Right.
But it was just so compelling, and he was talking about love, and here's this like big, like strong guy, British, talking about loving each other, and come on, you guys, let's do it. Now's the time. And so, yeah, that was really impactful for me.
Yeah, and it was at a point in our lives where there was a transition happening, and we hadn't caught up with the fact. So, you were still in your old marriage, and I was still in my old marriage, and expecting my daughter was going to be. She'd just been born. She'd just been born, so she was less than a month old, and to all of the things, living in 2 different countries, living in Florida and living in the UK, it's all the things that you would say there's no way that these people are ever going to form anything or do anything with it. It's just passing infatuation or something like that. But there was just something about her, and as she said, there's just something about me that compelled us enough to be interested enough to start to build some sort of a dialogue. And again, it wasn't an instant oh yeah, let's do this thing and let's move in together, and there was none of that. It was a case of that's impossible, but there's just something about this person, we don't know what it is. And the longer that we encircled each other, at first the weirder it got, and I drew away. Not long after, it was just like whoa, I'm just trying to understand the experience I've just had, and I'm just trying to come away from this very closed off person that couldn't look at himself in the mirror, and I'm trying to learn who I am and trying to become a little bit more emotionally mature as a man, and how can I do that, and then have all of this other stuff going on, and I did it in such a and now I just wouldn't dream about doing it. I just put everything off. I've got off Facebook, I've got off Messenger, and I just stopped
Oh
everything.
yeah, I remember you told me this on I
Yeah,
think
so that was
yeah.
the only way that I could possibly just. I It's my fault. If I'm gonna cause some pain, I'm just gonna stop it and push it away.
Yeah.
But then, not that long after, I had an email, and it was through another group that someone else had run off Facebook that I'd forgotten I'd even joined.
No, it was online with David Sunfellow's
Yeah.
um
So
site.
again, it was like I joined
Yeah.
that at about the same time as joining Facebook, and I'd forgotten about that because it didn't really resonate with me. But my profile was still on there, and then I had this message, and it was from Krista, and it was just the most loving message. And the thing that really resonated with me was that she didn't know what was going on, but she just was there. I'm just here for you, and I know your soul.
Mm.
We'd only just really started to correspond with each other, and when you have something that impactful said to you, you have to pick up and listen. And I picked up and listened.
Well, it was the showing of love, and that was really hard personally for me to do, but I was like,
It's hard for me to receive.
yeah, it's just it's one of those things where, when two people are in a sort of like a friendship, something else, not sure what that is, but and live, 15 or 4,500 miles away from each other, it's like, you know what, you're like, I know your soul, you're golden, and that's who you are. Like, whatever it is you're going through right now that you're torturing yourself with, that's not who you are. I know what you are and who you are. And so I'm here. I'll reflect that back to you. That's the energy I was in when I reached out. And it's like, I just hope you're okay. Just like, let me know if you're okay, and I'm here for you.
But you kept doing that, and it permeated, didn't it?
Well, I think the consistency, like when a couple, is just starting to get to know one another, and they're like sort of like navigating the ups and downs, and like oh, should I or shouldn't I, and what are they doing right now or not doing right now or whatever. You can get really all up in your head and be crazy over it, or you can just sort of like get down and into your heart and just stay right there and just be like, here I am, and this is where I'm going to be, and I'm going to be here like every time, and it's okay. And energetically, magnetically, we pick up on that
Right.
when we're connected. We're able to pick up on that over any distance. Doesn't matter. So in the UK, Ainsley was feeling that from me, and
It's entanglement, isn't it?
it's entanglement, and ultimately, we ended up navigating back to one another and making the choice to move forward in whatever this is. Like, there's something here and it's really freaking powerful. We don't know what it is, but we're going to trust it. And we're going to trust each other. And we're just going to start taking one step in front of the other, one step in front of the other. And that led us back to one another. And then it was like, it started to move forward pretty quickly. And we had like some really cool things happen during the course of our sort of like courtship.
Yeah.
It took us 9 months. We knew each other for 9 months before we were ever in like the same room together. And we spent a lot of time video chatting, like really getting to know each other, and just kind of exploring who we are together, and going through our lives as well. We both separated from our spouses, and at separate times, and not even when we were like necessarily in contact. And so, but we helped one another through those times as well. And yeah, we've had like regressions. I had a regression right in during a video chat, like a past life regression happened in my mind's eye. I could see myself as like a 16-year-old somewhere. I want to say it was Scotland. And I had like really long red hair and I was sweeping the yard, the dirt yard. And I looked up and he was coming over a hill with two men on either side of him. But he wasn't Ainsley. He
Yeah.
was a warrior, and he was coming back to the like the clan, coming back home. And I just felt this deep like love and gratitude, like, oh my God, he's alive and he's home. And and then we were together in that life. And then Ainsley had a separate sort of past life memory where he was a king and I was his wife. And it was like, maybe the same kind of lifetime, but years later, because he was, in my experience, my past life memory, he was like the protector. He was like our king,
Yeah.
in our clan.
So Joshua.
Yeah. Have you ever done a past life regression together? Like, yeah.
I've had regressions and I've had a lot of lives as a warrior or a soldier.
And you still are in a sense
Mhm.
because you're a police officer, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm currently in between, but yes. And
Yes.
yes, I am. Yeah. So,
But yeah, it feels like you're still out to defend the people. You're still
Right.
putting
I
yourself
just,
The protector.
to protect. Yeah.
that's my soul's mission, and I think it has been in lots of lives, and most of the lives that I've had, certainly the ones that I've been I've had regressed. I've
Yeah.
always a warrior. I've always had a protective element to me. I've never been a pillager or a plunderer. It's always been doing the war thing has been the last thing I wanted. It was always about this has got to lead to peace.
Yeah.
Right.
The
Yeah.
same thing for me now. If
The
there's
peaceful warrior.
yeah, and it's the same thing for me now. If I deal with people, it's always about trying to get a peaceful resolution.
Which is so important. I wish that we could, I mean, it's not always easy to, sometimes you just don't have that kind of time in a crisis, but I think it's a beautiful thing that you're serving in the way that you are. And I think I think there are a lot of police officers that want to do that, but it's the stress, the everything's fast moving, the short staffedness of it all can also prevent them from that mission. But wouldn't it be great if we could get to that place where it's, hey, why are you like this? Like, what's leading to this? I mean, if we really had the time and the energy to sort of devote to compassion with people that are doing things they shouldn't be doing, but why? Like, what kind of pain are they in and what resources do we have? It's just I know we don't have necessarily the time to do that and the staffing to do that, but it's beautiful that you are able to put that part of yourself to use in that way.
It's in the back of the car when they're on the way to receiving desk or custody in the UK, and
Yeah.
it's that moment where I'm not talking about the offence, not talking about
Yeah.
why they are there in the 3D sense,
Yeah.
but I'm talking to them,
Yeah.
realizing that what's put them there is life, and I have no understanding of that other than the fact they've lived something, and that's why they're doing what they're doing, and
Yeah.
that 5-10 minutes me being completely calm and just talking to them if they'll listen, even if it's just that they say, oh, do you know what, you're okay, you are.
Yeah.
Something resonates, there's a connection there, and I'd much prefer to have that connection. Might never see them again, but I have to hope that what I've done for them is just to maybe give them a pause of thought.
Yeah, something to think about.
Yeah, and then policing in the UK, dealing with people who are sometimes actively trying to commit suicide, and having the ability sometimes to step in and give them that next breath, give them that next day, and give them maybe be using my role to get them the help that they may have wanted for years, and just advocating for them a little bit and being a little bit more of a consistent voice, and getting them there. That's me. It's been me in other lives, and it's me now. And the one person especially that really reflects that is Krista, because when I don't feel like that, I see myself in her, and she sees herself in me, and we both have those moments where just had enough. What are we doing this for? And then we look at each other, and it just makes perfect sense because we see who we truly are in each other.
Yeah, that's actually a good topic is, listen, relationships are not easy. I mean, intimate relationships are not easy when you're sharing a life with another person, because there are always going to be compromises you have to make. Each person has their own lifestyle preferences or habits, and it's a constant negotiation of how can we negotiate this together? How can we compromise? And I would love to know from your perspective, both being near-death experiencers and having this perspective, and also understanding that you are in each other's soul family and always have been, and you've chosen these roles to have together. How would you say that that affects your relationship in general, your ability to communicate with each other, negotiate through difficult times? I know you're only human, but how, just in general, how does that affect the way that you relate with each other?
Well, for me, it's just all about love,
Yeah.
and that it's very easy to go from an ego-centered thought or act or state of being to one of love when your partner is of the same sort of love vibration.
Hmm.
And that's where, finding each other in this life, we know how fortunate we are, and we've both done the sort of what we refer to as inner, so many of us, inner work to not slay the ego, but to diminish it to the point where it protects us. You know, it's there as contrast, um, but it's not our main focus when it's us. And
It's a case of, for me, I know that if there's something going on and Krista picks up on it, if I immediately have an egotistic response within myself, you get that horrible knot that you get in your sort of between your stomach and your heart. I become very interested in it now. So it's like, huh, why am I having that response? And rather than looking at Krista as the reason why I've had that response, because she's picked up on something, maybe I've, not tidied up, or she's asking me something that I'm having an egotistic reaction to. Like, why am I having the reaction? And I'm actually very grateful for her to bring that up, because it's something that I can then recognize within myself and then let go of. And then I breathe, and I'm like, I really actually appreciate that she loves me so much that she can help me to, again, she just reflects me to me. And the reason why I have a reaction is because you see yourself in that person. And in a relationship where you're not quite so aware, that's where the ego does turn into an argument. That's where there is this push and the pull. The book, the Celestine Prophecies, great book. If you haven't read it, read it. One of the biggest things that I took from that, and it just seems like such a simple thing, is the Vesica Pisces. So the Vesica Pisces is two circles that have joined in the middle, and then you have the part that they've joined in, which is like the super part. So if you're two whole people, so you're two whole circles, you don't need anything from someone else. You're not two half circles trying to make a whole. You're two whole people within yourself. When you join together, you're still two whole people, but the point that where they meet becomes a super whole. So that's where the superhuman element comes in. That's where the conjoining of the souls happens, but you're still two whole people. I don't need Krista to make me happy. Krista helps me to be happy because she reflects my true self to me.
Oh, that's beautiful.
The same way around. So we help each other. And looking at the real times of where the ego and fear has kicked in. I'm sure I shared this last time, but again, it's meaningful to me for me to share now. When I had the after we got married, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And that's that moment where it's like, because we got married, we'd already made the decision that I was to come over here, so we were going to start the process, going to do the immigration process, and that had kicked in. Krista had done all the paperwork and worked really hard on making sure that that was all sent off, and then had this diagnosis, and it's like, oh well, maybe that's the thing that stops it. Then great, my life's done. Maybe this is the reason why they then turn around and say, oh no, you're sick, you're not coming to the US, and all of these things just curtailed. But there was this reflection in Krista, and she had an awareness that I didn't have, which is that all is well. And she kept just reflecting me back to me. And in the first instance, it was a case of, right, I need to know when your operation is, because as soon as you have your operation, then I'm coming over. And when I knew my operation date, you actually had already had time off booked, didn't you? Because you were going to go and see a friend. Mm-hmm. So the exact week that I was having my operation, she'd already had that week booked off from work. And, she cancelled with a friend and flew over, and we spent a lovely week together, and we went to Glastonbury, which is one of our favourite places in the UK. And we went to Stonehenge, which is, another energetically fabulous place to go. And she was there with me, and she was there with me just after. And then not that long after that, when I'd recovered enough, I had to go for a CT scan, and the biopsy of the cancer had to be done. And then that, with the CT scan, is made into a report, and then you go back in and see the specialist, and they tell you what's going on. So I had expected them to tell me that it was testicular cancer, and that I was going to do some sort of chemo, and that everything should be okay, because as a man, if you're going to get any sort of cancer, that's the one that you want to get, because it's the most curable. So then when you're told that it's not testicular cancer, and it's actually something a lot worse, you're in a room with a specialist that won't look at you, and all they'll say is that we're almost positive you've got lymphoma. Don't ask us any questions, because it's not our specialty. We're very rarely wrong, and there you go. So you have this information dumped on you, and what do you do with it? So I did the silly thing. I looked on Mr. Google, and Mr. Google gave
Ainsley.
Lots of basically the research that had been done surrounding lymphoma in someone of my age at the time, with a primary presentation of testicular cancer, was basically a death sentence, because I would have to have already had an end stage autoimmune disease for that to have been caused. And that was it. I couldn't find anything else, and that was the only research that was done. The only other research was people who were twice my age, and then it was for a different reason. So again, ego and fear kicks in. What do I do now? And then there was the self-blame of, God, whatever, I've got something that I didn't know I had, and have I given it to Krista, and how does that affect her, and how does it affect my daughter, and how does it affect Maggie, my stepdaughter, and how does it affect everyone? And there's me in the middle of it, and I'm now the cause of all of these catastrophes. So I text Krista and said, I think I've done something a little bit stupid, and I've looked on to Google, and I found these things out. My Krista at the time was working in the ER in Venice Regional, and normally what would happen is I would text, and I would maybe get a response 4 or 5 hours later when she had a second. She's always very busy, but within about 40 minutes she'd called me, and again, even just over the phone, she reflected my true self to me and turned around and said, look, basically she didn't believe the diagnosis anyway. She'd done her own research, and she'd read the same things as I did, and she said, that's not you. And regardless of that, it doesn't matter. You are loved.
Oh.
So there's me desperately thinking, God, what if I've caused this, catastrophe? You are loved. And that's one of those things for me, who'd always wanted to be loved properly. Having that said in that moment brings you back to yourself. So you are loved. It doesn't matter what we have to do. It doesn't matter if we have to bring you over here and you have treatment here, or I will quit my job and I'll come to the UK. It doesn't matter.
That's the determined Aquarian spirit.
Yeah.
Yes.
it's that it doesn't matter. We will do whatever we need to do for whatever time we've got, whether it's a lifetime, whether it's just a few months.
Yeah.
And at that point where, I still didn't have any answers, I was still having to wait for to see the specialist in hematology, which obviously deals with the lymphoma, as opposed to the oncology, which had dealt with the the testicular side. I was still having to wait. And the other thing that was really difficult for me was that it was 2018 in the summer, and Maggie, your daughter, my stepdaughter, our wonderful girl, was turning 18. And I had a special present that I'd lined up for her. The last time I'd been here before the diagnosis, I'd sort of said, "Oh, Mag, if you were going to get a private plate for your car, what would you have on it?" And her nickname at high school was Maggot.
Oh,
Maggie.
how lovely.
Yeah. She loved it. It was, it was her thing, and that was what her friends called her, and whatever. So I was like, let's get her a private plate. She was about to go to, college. So we managed to find her a plate with the college logo on it, with the college football team logo on it, and I managed to get this plate with M4GOT, so maggot.
Cute.
And I wanted to be here in the summer to convalesce, so that I could give her that present in person. And then, with that diagnosis, you're not going anywhere. We don't know if it's aggressive. We don't know when if you're going to have to start treatment, you're going to have to start it straight away. You're not going anywhere. So the only glimmer of hope was that there was a nurse practitioner who was had been affiliated with the hematology department, who said that the meeting that they were going to have, so that when they redid my results, the meeting that they were going to have, she would sit in on, and she would advocate for me, and she would let the doctors know of my situation, because it's not usual. And she would see whether there was any leniency, any way around it, which I appreciated. And then on the Monday, I had a phone call from her, and I was with my mother at the time, in our local town, looking in a health food store to see if we could find some health food alternatives for me if I was going to have to go through aggressive chemo. And, "Oh, hello, Mr. Threadgold," was the response I had when I answered the phone. I was like, "Oh, she sounds quite chirpy. That's okay." So my heart was going. She said, "Yeah, we've had the meeting, and I'm pleased to say that although we're very rarely wrong, we have been on this occasion. And you haven't got lymphoma, and is actually testicular cancer, and not only is it that, but it's the mildest form."
Well, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
And yet, yay.
So I went from maybe I haven't got that long to live to, oh, it's the mildest form.
It's curable.
It's just because they have two main types of testicular cancer. And there's a seminoma and a non-seminoma. The seminoma is a single type of cancer, and it's it responds very well to a particular type of chemo. So it doesn't like it at all, and it just disappears. So if there's very rarely gets into the body, but if it gets into the body, then it does respond well to this chemo. The other type is a non-seminoma, which is a little bit more aggressive, because it can be two different types of cancer, and they have to have a little bit more of an aggressive approach. You have to have like nodes in 6 or 7 different ports, and you have to have a few rounds of chemo to make sure it's all gone. So, I mean, I'd have taken any at that point, but to be told that it was the mildest form and it was the seminoma, I'm still getting told I had cancer, but I'm getting told that I've had my life back, and that I can go from the UK to the US. I can travel. It will allow it, because I don't have to have treatment straight away.
Yeah, there's a gift in being told the worst case news. Maybe it's like, and so that then when they're like, well, you just have this kind of cancer, then suddenly it's like, oh, is that all? And so in a way, it's like a strange relief, and maybe it helps you cope with the fact that you have testicular cancer, but it isn't lymphoma. So I can see why that's terrible, and I've heard of that happening before, like this horrible misdiagnosis. But then the gift is Oh, surprise. It's not as bad as you thought. So now you just have trauma. Don't worry about it. But emotional trauma, but at least now you've got something to look like to feel good
Yeah,
about.
it
Now,
was the yeah,
yeah,
it was the choosing love, which was the
it
key for me,
it,
because
it
I was in a
absolutely.
Over fear.
very, very fearful place for that short period, and that phone call with her changed everything, because I
Yeah.
went from God, what do I do, to it doesn't matter, I'm loved.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's one of those that it's one of those very few times where I'd really accepted that I am loved and cherished. I've always tried to love, but I haven't always been able to receive it, and I haven't always been able to know what to do with it. It's a typical guy who doesn't really know how to deal with his own emotions, and um, having to learn how to have emotions and know how to use them effectively and positively, and allow them as a release, and then allowing the feeling of being loved is huge. And that's something that I've since that point I've always advocated to other people. And again, that's why I do what I do, because if I can impart that with people.
One of the things that about that diagnosis that and then the re-diagnosis, downgraded, was that we so intensely from the outset we're like, love is going to heal this, love is going to heal you, that period, like that's it, that's what we're focusing on. We're not focusing on disease, we're focusing on love. And I mean, I believe that those cells were healed on that slide. I think that that they were
Yeah.
transformed on that slide. And
I believe that.
again, then it was the more preferred diagnosis.
Yeah, and your story really just I've been thinking about this a lot with the people that we pair up with, whether we have kids with them or not. So obviously, from a biological standpoint, we're meant to mate and find a partner so that we can procreate. But from a spiritual standpoint, I've been talking about this a lot, that the person or the people that you end up together with in partnership, in romantic partnership, I really feel like even if they aren't the right person for you, there's always this reason why you come together, and it's to teach, it's to be mirrors for each other. And so even the ones that didn't work out are like, wow, that was such a lesson though. It's always hard to disconnect emotionally and disconnect from the attachment, but there's also I really do have this strong belief in that the people that come into our lives as our romantic partners are meant to teach us, and I think it's such a symbiotic thing. What's your thought on why the two of you chose this life together? Was that it? Then you might have just said it.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also the fact that we've had this for so many times over the years, where we've been in different places together, whether we're just sat in a restaurant together, in a cafe together, or whether we've been at an Irons conference or something like that. We'll always, always, always have someone come over and say, "You two are just the most beautiful couple."
Hmm.
All we've done is we've just sat there and we've just enjoyed each other's company, but there's something in what they saw which inspired them, and we just have that all the time, everywhere, don't we?
Yeah.
And it's lovely, and we don't tire of it. We're not there for other people's adoration, but if we can inspire people, even if
Yeah.
we don't know that we're doing it, just by being who we are to each other.
Well, that's what
Yeah.
love radiates, and it's we are not just these physical bodies, and we are so much, we expand outward from our bodies energetically. And whether we can see it with our eyes or not, it's being perceived by other people. So, your vibe attracts your tribe. It's like we are these energetic beings walking around under the cloud or the veil of just being 3D, when that's only just one small part of what we are here in the body, in this physical realm. We are energy. And so when Ains and I are together, it's like the vibe is there and other people are perceiving it whether they can actually see the glow, which some people have told us they can, but or they're perceiving the energy and how powerful it is and how good it feels, you know. And it's like that's what a loving being in a loving relationship can be like, can feel like. It's like we can all experience that. It just takes it takes desire to love more than not. I feel like, I mean, it can be so simple, you know?
Yeah. And you just answered my next question, but I'm just going to ask it anyway in case anything else comes to mind. What would be your relationship advice for people coming together in a romantic partnership?
Have them um, or remind them that they are mirrors to each other. Like we said, we said this a couple of times. Remind that they're mirrors to each other. Remind them that they have their own path, their own growth to have, and to not stop that growth just because there was someone else. Because, like I said before, with the Vesica Pisces, what tends to happen is that you have two people who are not fully whole, and what they do is they look for the wholeness in someone else. So it works quite well for a little while because you have the two halves that come together, and I get what I need from this person, and they get what they need from me. But then you get into the part of the relationship where it's like, well, it's quite a lot of energy to give you what you need because I need that myself, and then it's the same thing. And then what you tend to find is that they don't find they battle then because, well, I still need what you have, and but I can't give you what you need from me because I need what I have that I need from you. So if you're on a path of self growth and self fulfillment in the sense that you're looking to become more whole, what is it that I'm missing within myself? Then you become more and more of the Vesica Pisces. And then I'm not looking for the things in the other person because I find it in myself. What I see in the other person is me. We don't battle each other for. I don't need anything I don't need her energies to make me feel better. She just reflects me to me, and she doesn't need any of my energies. I just reflect her to her, and occasionally we are rocks for each other, but it's a constant. So if she's struggling with something, I am just there. I am just me. I don't love her any differently. There's no condition there. I don't need her to be anything other than who she is in that moment. And that's it. Sometimes I don't even need to say anything. I just need to be there while she's going through it. Same thing when I'm upset. She's just a constant for me. And she doesn't require me to be happy all the time. She doesn't require me to not be upset. I know it's not convenient. She just is there. And, if people can do that more, and communicate a little bit more. And like I said earlier on, if something comes up and it's like, doesn't feel good, this person said something and it just feels like, oh, I don't like that. I don't like how that feels. It's like, well, they're giving you the greatest gift. They're presenting something to you which maybe needs to be healed.
That's
That's like
beautiful.
it's like a little kid who's cut themselves, and the parent wants to help, and the child does this, but it hurts. Well, it's going to hurt until you let me see. I just need to see, and then you see, and then obviously there's the healing there. So, as people trying to navigate the relationship, maybe be less like, oh, but it hurts. It'd be a little bit more like, okay, well, I'll open up and I'll share and trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My grandfather gave a message through a psychic medium, and his message was to me to trust. And this was early on in our relationship, and I'm like, I do trust, but what I realized was that no, I was still holding back. And
Yeah.
that's like, when we heal the parts in ourselves that need healing, then we are more of who we really are, which is love, and then we are able to be more fully in a relationship. So I guess my advice would be, if you're already in a relationship and you're hitting some difficult points, then it's probably a good idea to sort of turn inward and explore what it is that is going on within you, and maybe something will come up that you have the opportunity then to focus on and heal in some way, maybe with your partner's help, maybe just yourself or in some other way with friends or other supports. But you know, not pointing the finger and saying, I hurt because of you, something you did. Oftentimes that's a deflection of the pain that's coming up, or you know, issue that's coming up within us. So it's always like my suggestion would be to first kind of self reflect and just take some time before um, you know, pointing fingers. It's like the easiest, lowest vibration, lowest, like just the easiest, less resistance. Like, oh, you're the problem. Um, but I think if we do less of that to each other, then all of us would benefit.
And then be a little bit easier. You know, you touched on it earlier on with people when you have a relationship and it doesn't work out. You know, they've brought something to the table. They've brought you to some place, and maybe it is that it's a reminder that you know, maybe you're always attracted to the same type of person. It always ends up the same way. Well, maybe try something different. Maybe this is just the universe's way of saying, we're trying to show you something here. We can only give you what you're asking for, or whatever. But until you see that this isn't working for you, then you know you're always going to come to the same place. Then when you do see that, you do see that that person, you know, is a gift to help you to wake up. And then when you do wake up, and then when you do perhaps say, well, maybe I don't need to be in a relationship with anyone else at the moment. Maybe I need to be in a better relationship with myself. When you can do that, then maybe the next person that comes along isn't part of that whole cycle. Because it's all cyclical, isn't it? You know, we can keep going
Yep.
on patterns, and we're always trying to find. We're always going back to the same job, and we're always finding the same issues. Even if it's different people, it's the different people, same problems. Or we can go, maybe it's me that needs to change.
Yep.
I need to have a little bit of a word with myself and go inward, like you said, and start to grow a little bit. And then your vibration raises, you start attracting new things into your life. Things do feel better, which means that you blossom more and you do attract better things in your life. And then maybe you do attract someone that you then finally feel as though you deserve.
Yep. Thank you so much, both of you. I loved hearing your story, and I really appreciate you sharing. Again, if you want to check out Ainsley Threadgold's NDE story, you can look it up on Magic is Real. And Krista Gorman, thank you so much for joining us, and both of you for sharing. I love this angle of the how we express love through relationship, and through uh, romantic relationships, intimate relationships, and the whole mirror thing. That's been on my mind so much. So thank you both, my friends. I just love you, and you inspire me. And I know that you're going to inspire a lot of other people. Even that last message, so relevant, so timely for me, and I'm sure for so many other people as well. So thank you so much for being here and letting me share your story by having you share your story with me.
Thanks so much for having us. This
Thank
is
you.
My
really
pleasure.
wonderful.